Hi everyone! This is Teacher Cathy and welcome once again to our science class. For today's learning objectives, A. Determine the percentage composition of a compound given its chemical formula. And B. Emphasize the importance of limit intake of junk foods and processed foods based on its percentage composition. Are you interested to know how much of an element is present in a compound? Don't blink your eyes. Keep on watching. Suppose you receive your test paper in science and you got 85% in the exam. What does this mean? This means to say that you got 85% correctly, or out of 100 questions, you answered 85 questions correctly. Another example to understand the concept of percentage composition is through the use of 3-in-1 instant coffee. We know for a fact that instant coffee contains coffee, sugar, and creamer. One sachet of instant coffee contains 15 grams coffee, 15 grams sugar, and 10 grams creamer. Adding the masses of these three components together, you will get 40 grams. Now, let us calculate the percentage composition of these three components, starting up with coffee. 15 grams of coffee divided by 40 grams of coffee mixture equals 0.375. Multiply this by 100 will give you 37.5%. Now what about for sugar? 15 grams of sugar divided by 40 grams of coffee mixture equals 0.375. Multiply this by 100 equals 37.5%. And lastly, for creamer, 10 grams of creamer divided by 40 grams of coffee mixture equals 0.25 times 100 equals 25%. Summing up all the computed values together, you will get 100%. What does these computed values mean? This means that in one sachet of 3-in-1 instant coffee, 37.5% of this is coffee, another 37.5% is sugar, and the remaining 25% is creamer. During science experiments, your teacher may require you to prepare solutions or to verify the purity of some substances. Thus, you need to have knowledge on how to compute the percentage composition of compounds. What is meant by percentage composition? Percentage composition can be expressed mathematically as percentage composition is equal to the mass of the element divided by the molar mass of the compound times 100. Amidst COVID-19 pandemic, people, especially those who belong to low-income bracket, solely depend on ayuda and relief goods given them, like instant noodles, in order to survive. What makes an instant noodles? An instant noodle actually contains potassium carbonate or K2CO3 and sodium carbonate or Na2CO3. Are these compounds making up the noodles beneficial to our body? Let's find out by calculating its percentage composition. To compute the percentage composition of the substances in the compound, first, let's compute the mass of the compound. To do this, first we need to identify the different elements involved in the compound. For potassium carbonate, the different elements are potassium, carbon, and oxygen. And for the compound sodium carbonate, we have sodium, carbon, and oxygen. Secondly, determine the number of atoms of these elements by referring to the subscripts in the chemical formula of the compound. For potassium carbonate, the number of atoms of the different elements are as follows. For potassium, 2, carbon 1, and oxygen 3. And for the compound sodium carbonate, the number of atoms of the different elements are as follows. For sodium, 2, carbon, 1, and for oxygen, 3. Next, identify the atomic mass of these elements using the periodic table. For the compound potassium carbonate, let's start with potassium. Its atomic mass is 39. Carbon, 12, and oxygen, 16. For the compound sodium carbonate, we have for sodium, 23, carbon, 12, and oxygen, 16. Then, multiply the number of atoms of these elements with their corresponding atomic mass. For the compound potassium carbonate, we have 2 times 39 will give you 78. For carbon, 1 times 12 equals 12. For oxygen, 3 times 16 equals 48. What about for the compound sodium carbonate? Let's start with sodium. 2 times 23 equals 46. Carbon, 1 times 12 equals 12. Oxygen, 3 times 16 equals 48. And lastly, get the total of these computed values to determine the molar mass of the compound. So for potassium carbonate, 78 plus 12 plus 48 will give you 138. This is equivalent to the molar mass of the compound. What about for sodium carbonate? 46 plus 12 plus 48 equals 106. This is equal to the molar mass of the compound sodium carbonate. Now, we are ready to compute for the percentage composition of these substances. All we need to do is to divide each computed values under column E with the computed molar mass labeled as F in the table. Then, multiply this by 100. The units are automatically cancelled. So, for potassium carbonate, 78 divided by 138 times 100 will give you 56.52%. For carbon, 12 divided by 138 times 100 will give you 8.70%. For oxygen, 48 divided by 138 times 100 equals 34.78%. What does these computed values indicate? This means to say that in the compound potassium carbonate, 56.52% is made up of potassium, 8.70% is made up of carbon, and 34.78% is made up of oxygen. Now, what about for sodium carbonate? Let's start with sodium. 46 divided by 106 times 100 equals 43.40%. 12 divided by 106 times 100 equals 11.32%. For oxygen, 48 divided by 106 times 100 equals 45.28%. Adding up all the computed values will give you 100%. So what does this mean? This means that in the compound sodium carbonate, 43.40% is sodium, 11.32% is carbon, and 45.28% is oxygen. So, what substances have the highest computed values based from the calculated percentage composition of potassium carbonate and sodium carbonate? It's potassium and sodium. So what does this indicate? This reveals the dark side of instant noodles. Instant noodles contain high sodium and potassium concentration. These substances are not good to our body. This may cause hypertension and heart attack. Noodles does not contain essential nutrients such as vitamins, minerals, and fiber, which are more needed by our body. Now, what could be the best substitute for instant noodles? According to my research, the following may be healthy substitute for instant noodles: rice noodles, glass noodles, vegetable noodles, homemade noodles, and whole wheat pasta. One realization I have during this one-year lockdown is food is very important. Without food, it is very impossible for us to survive. At this juncture, we are going to perform an activity entitled, Am I Fertile? The objective for this activity is apply the concept of percentage composition in choosing the best fertilizer to nourish the soil. First, let's read a short selection. Studies in the year 2019 have revealed that soil fertility status of Philippine rice fields in Maligaya, Nueva Ecija have shown that the decline in crop yield is caused by nutrient depletion, salinization, and other soil-related problems. Soil fertility is usually associated with its ability to produce crop of good quality and high yield. If the soil is depleted with nutrients, farmers usually replenish the soil with fertilizers containing nitrogen because one of the nutrients needed to replenish the soil is nitrogen. If you are one of the hired agricultural technicians to improve the soil fertility in Maligaya, Nueva Ecija, which of the following fertilizers are you going to recommend? And how will you convince the farmers to accept your recommendation? Given is the table with the fertilizers 1. Ammonia or NH3, 2. Ammonium sulfate or NH4, 2. SO4, 3. Ammonium nitrate or NH4, NO3 with their corresponding elements, number of atom, and atomic mass. You are going to solve for the molar mass and percentage composition of nitrogen in each fertilizer. You may pause the video to compute and solve for the molar mass of the compound and the nitrogen content in each fertilizer. Now, let's check your answer. So, which from the different fertilizer will you recommend to the farmers in Maligaya, Nueva Ecija? The correct answer should be ammonia. From the computed values, ammonia has the highest nitrogen content. Thus, it is the most effective fertilizer to nourish the soil. How will you convince the farmers to accept your recommendations? Your answer should be by determining the nitrogen content of the fertilizer. The higher the nitrogen content, the more effective the fertilizer is to replenish the nutrients in the soil. Learn many things today? Very good. Give yourself a tap on the shoulder. For tomorrow's discussion, I would like you to perform an activity entitled It's Grocery Time. Saturday is a grocery day for mommies. From the grocery bag mommy brought home, choose 2 food items in sachet, can, pouch, or bottle. Check the label on nutrition facts or ingredients. And then, be able to answer the following questions. From these labels, identify which one can be a good source of carbon and sodium. Number 2, are these substances good for your health? Why? And 3, in what other ways can you make use of the concept of percentage composition? I hope you learned something today. See you tomorrow for another learning experience with Teacher Cathy.